So there's been so much discussion, of course, over the past couple of weeks, given the deal that China and Canada worked out over EVs. Not all of it positive. It doesn't have to, I guess you probably heard, of course, we played that clip many, many times. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, taking the Prime Minister to task for having done it, says without even consultation. I understand they're meeting, by the way, sometime this week. But then an op-ed in the Globe and Mail, which brought up a rather interesting story, which is this. What if, given the state of the industry nowadays, given the tariffs that the U.S. has implemented, right, and the fact that Canadians are spending more and more to buy cars, even though they're manufactured here, what about the consideration of taking our auto industry and repurposing it, if you can use that word, to focus on our defense sector? This is an idea, by the way, that has been talked about before. There is precedence for it. I want to find out from Greg Sorbara, who's on the line, why this is a good idea, why it's being talked about now. He is the former Ontario Finance Minister. He's a Liberal M&A for Vaughan until he retired in 2012. Mr. Sorbara, thank you for your time today. And let me ask the question. I said, just so people understand, you point out there is precedence for this. When did it happen and how did it play out?
Well, thanks, Aaron. And there is precedent going back to the Second World War when C.D. Howe, who was one of the giants of the Canadian government during that time, essentially repurposed our manufacturing and our auto capacity to provide the military equipment that we needed for the Second World War. And that worked out very well. And after the war, a very different auto industry developed, which ended up being part of the Auto Pact and the Free Trade Agreement and CUSMA.
By the way, I will point out, you're not the only one to have signed this op-ed, right? You have other people with you, business people as well, who share the same opinion. I guess for people listening, though, there was so much ruckus after we had the Prime Minister announce a Chinese EV deal about the future of the auto industry in this country altogether. And you point out that, with CUSMA coming up, even if it does work out, you still think this would be a good idea. Why?
Well, yeah. I mean, the fact is that there is a total transformation of the automobile industry around the world. There was a time when there were the big three, General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford. In Ontario, they were the providers of great industry and great jobs. But the fact is that part of the industry in Ontario is shrinking and it's under severe pressure. In fact, the major manufacturers in Ontario are now Toyota and Honda. But the fact is that whether or not there's going to be a successor to CUSMA, this industry is changing. It's undergoing transformation. And rather than look in the rear view mirror, we think that we need to look to where the capacity of our workers and the machinery in our factories can be put to best use. And we think that part of that is building the kind of military capacity that Prime Minister Carney has talked about doing, and repurposing the auto industry is one of the ways in which we can do that.
So obviously, for that to take place, there'd be tremendous retooling involved as well. But before I even ask you about that, is the suggestion that we simply can no longer be competitive in the auto industry on an international scale?
No, I think the fact is that the auto industry has become a very different industry from the one that existed when we first signed the Auto Pact. I mean, if you look around Ontario and Canada and North America, so many of the cars that we're driving have been manufactured somewhere in Europe or somewhere in Asia. And that will continue to be the case. I think it was one of the reasons why the Prime Minister agreed with the Chinese to allow for the import of electric Chinese vehicles and in return get rid of the tariffs that were really strangling our agricultural industry out west.
So is the thinking then that if we were to do that, to say follow through on this idea, we could drop all auto tariffs, which would benefit Canadians? Is that the thinking here?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we have a forward-looking view of what this capacity could do in the future, it may well mean the elimination or the reduction of tariffs, so that the auto market is a global market where people are buying cars manufactured in Ontario or the United States or China or Europe. And it would provide for perhaps a a much sounder and more competitive auto industry and have people buy cars at a lesser price.
But, it would seem to me, and again, not fully understanding this, I guess, but obviously the price of labor here is much higher than it would be in places obviously like China or perhaps even in other places in Asia. Just on that alone, we can't be competitive as far as price is concerned. So is part of your thinking that we should realize that and just give that industry up because we can't compete?
No, I think it's not a matter of giving the industry up. I think we can continue to compete, but we can continue to compete, but not at the level that was part of the Auto Pact and the Free Trade Agreement. We've got to realize that a lot of our manufacturing and assembly capacity needs to be repurposed to do other things that are, in the long term, a benefit for Canada. And part of that is doing what we need to do to support our military. Part of it may be the manufacture of parts, not only for military purposes, but for the auto industry right around North America. But right now, what we see from the U.S. is really severe pressure on our auto industry, and that pressure may continue to put greater strains on the automobile industry, both in Ontario and across Canada. So let's look at what we can do with the capacity that we have.
So I brought up the retooling issue. Obviously, there are thousands of people in this country employed in that automotive sector. Would all those jobs, in your estimation, then be just transferred over to defense?
Well, it's a matter of developing a plan where the transformation can take place. Those workers are highly skilled workers. Part of a retraining program would have them involved in the manufacture of things that are in demand in Canada. So will all the jobs be saved on day one? I don't think so. But the idea is to use the capacity that we have for a new purpose, because the old purpose may no longer be viable in Ontario and indeed Canada.
All right. I'm just curious, has this idea, anyone run this up the flagpole in Ontario? What has the reaction been?
Well, my two co-authors have a great deal of experience in the Ontario economy, both Jim Arnott and James Hines. And this idea came from a conversation that we had about what can we do to strengthen Ontario's fundamentals in an environment where auto is under great threat, and the need for new military equipment is part of the future. And we just decided to put that in the form of an op-ed. The Globe and Mail published it, and I think that the idea is now, because it's out there, will circulate both with the federal government and the Ontario government.
We will leave it at that. Mr. Sorbara, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
You bet. So there you go. Not so crazy, I guess. I mean, you could be manufacturing a car one day, manufacturing a tank the next. As I said, the question is, and he said, obviously, this would take a lot more time and a lot more detail. Maybe those are just transferable jobs. And then we actually, say, yeah, great idea. We shall see.
I'm Luke Wilson. Join me each week for Film Never Lies. We're going in depth on football and a lot more. We'll pull back the curtain on life in the pros and dive deeper into the stories making the headlines. No hot takes, no lazy narratives, just real honest conversations. You can watch or listen to Film Never Lies on all the TSN platforms and iHeartRadio app.